Well, friends, it's 9
I have a
o'clock.
very loud voice from everybody.
We have not a ton, but some territory still to cover today. So I'm going to start us right at 9 and hope as folks join us, we'll gather a crowd as we have the last 2 Sundays. If you're watching online, thanks for joining us as well. And if you're watching later, thanks for taking the time to view this forum. Come on in, folks. Hopefully you've got a copy of the prayer in your hands. Today we are on week 3 of our Stewardship Faith Forums, looking at both our capital campaign for 2025 and 26, and also the annual campaign for 25-26. So the funds will raise for our operating expenses, and today we'll turn to those items, but not without some review. Let's start though with prayer. This prayer created for us by the Spiritual Emphasis Committee of our capital campaign team. That's Jax Collins and Dan Vogel, who guided us through that with some input from clergy and others, and we're just grateful that we have this prayer to anchor us each week as we think through this campaign. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray together. O God, whose love knows no end, and whose dwelling is with the humble and generous of heart, inspire in us a spirit of holy generosity. Free us from the fear that clings to wealth, so that through our giving, opening our hands in trust and joy, we may become repairers of the breach, builders of a house where love can dwell and all are welcome. Make of this campaign more than bricks and mortar, but instead a living sign of your kingdom, where justice is sown, compassion takes root, and your grace flows freely through your people, through Jesus Christ, who with you and the Holy Spirit lives and reigns, one God, now and forever. Amen. As in the weeks past, if you've been coming to our forum series, you know that the theme for this campaign is raising up the foundation of many generations. Direct reference to this passage in Isaiah, that as we prayed as leaders over the work to be done, and as we listened to the feedback provided in the listening phase and the feasibility study, we together with our consultants heard again and again this theme of a community of people working to ensure that we were not only raising up funds to repair our building, but that through the work we do here, both in ministry and in services held in this building, both ministries, programs, outside groups, we would be helping repair what is broken in the world beyond our doors, repairers of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. This is a dream in the prophecy of Isaiah, that the people of God would be about this in every age and in their work together, and it echoed through in our work. You may notice that then in the theme, you might also be hearing this come November 9th, and in the materials that some of you have yet to receive as we begin our congregational gifts, you'll see this echoed again. As each Sunday with our capital campaign forums and our stewardship forums, we start with why. That is the values and the theology that form the foundation of our projects that we're undertaking together. So I want to make sure that we recap a little bit about where we've covered, what we've been through already in the first 2 forums. If you've not been able to participate in those, they're available for you online on our capital campaign webpage. And after the launch of our campaign, where we'll celebrate where we are so far in this early fundraising and announce to you the number, we will also then have events following on that main kickoff where you'll have a lot of chances to meet with leaders in the capital campaign committee to do a deep dive. So particularly, you may want to revisit some things that have come up since we walked through this the first time. And so there'll be teas and progressive dinners and cocktail parties and other opportunities for you to just connect in smaller groups and ask more questions after you've received your packet. So even if you've come to these forums, you're still encouraged and welcome to sign up for those as well. Which is to say that the November 9th event is more of a kickoff. It's not going to be a forum, it'll be a celebration. And so you may find at the end of that, because everyone will have their packets at the end of it, anyone who attends will go home with their packet, that you might have more questions. That's an opportunity for you to sign up for one of those small group meetings. Our capital campaign team has been meeting weekly since this summer. Throughout that time, we've been continuously coming back to our deep why for this campaign, those motivating truths that have been articulated in various ways, but always seem to include some version of the following priorities. Our priorities are achieving our fundraising goals, no doubt. We want to make sure that we do what we said we could do and accomplish it for the glory of God and for the benefit of this church. That also means building positive momentum. We want to preserve support for our annual budget. So if you've already been in a conversation with one of our inviters, or if you're about to receive your materials on November 9th, you'll hear that message in there. If you're choosing between what you can do in this fiscal year, we really want you to prioritize the annual budget. And if you can, then the capital campaign, which has a 4-year pay-in period, which will allow some people to then make a much more reasonable choice on timing of their gifts. We want to ensure that all gifts are welcome and that all know that their support is needed. This is not a campaign just for the wealthiest members of St. John's or the folks who have the biggest checkbooks. It's for everyone. We want to make sure that the gifts of every size and each person knows that we want their support and need their support. That this is both a democratic process and an inclusive process. We wanted to, and this has been a goal all along the way, to address our relationship with money and our ongoing money narratives individually and as a church. Every time one encounters a fundraising project in leadership, I can tell you the truth here as a rector, but I know this is true for leaders of nonprofits and folks who run the budgets of businesses. Anytime we talk about money, our deepest held values come to the surface, and many of our anxieties come with them. Many of our stories we've been told and that we tell ourselves come right along with them as well. We want to make sure that in the church, when we talk about money, and especially as we embark on a significant fundraising project, that we're talking about money in ways that are life-giving, that are honest and truthful, and that reflect the values of the gospel and that look and feel like what Jesus looked like and felt like. And so we're not perfect in that. We've not always done that well, and so we're working on it. And it takes a whole community together being honest about where we come from with our money narratives. We want to focus on deepening connections and nurturing healthy relationships with each other in this process, with our neighbors and with God. In the end, it's all about people. It's all about our connections to each other. It's all about how we relate. We want to stay centered in our call to serve the world. So often when churches get together, they talk about their values outside of budgetary issues and talk about serving the world. But when we get to the hard nuts and bolts of budgets, we talk about what is it going to do for us? What is my investment going to be returned to me as a member of this community? We want to flip that narrative and think, how does our giving collectively bless and encourage and help and heal the world? Hence that repairers of the breach and restorers of streets to live in. We want to have fun together. If you've been coming to these forums, maybe you haven't felt like this has been what you call fun, but know that the campaign, the team that's been working behind the scenes, we have fun together. We laugh, we joke, we celebrate being a community and at work together. I think on Sunday the 9th, you're going to feel that fun. It is a celebration. It is a party. And we want to keep that going with the events that follow, a sense of celebration, because that's what we do well at St. John's. And of course, we want to care for our building as a resource for ministry. So let's talk about why. Each week when our committee meets, we start with a little ritual of reminding each other what are our collective whys. We sometimes bring pictures, sometimes we reference art, sometimes we bring a song or a poem. One of our Wednesday meetings, Sally Sand brought this picture, and I thought it'd be great for her to tell the story that's behind it, because it might not be immediately evident to you how this, a picture of a dining room, connects to St. John's.
I'm happy to. Thanks, sir. I'm going to scoot over here so that Phil and Carrie don't have my back.
Absolutely.
And as Jared said, you've heard this. So
Yeah.
hi.
Hi.
I know everybody. So what's happening? This is my dining room.
Oh.
And when asked to do why, I thought, I think I've got a why here. All right. If you see in the corner here, there's an appliance. It's a split So it's air conditioning and heat. For 30 years, my husband and I lived in this 1920s in our home, which is a 1926 two-level colonial house. We're very happy there. We're empty nesters. We had one son, so smallish house. But every year, Charlie would bring up the air conditioner from the basement and put it in a window upstairs. And then we would try to push that air by keeping this, these doors closed and push the air. And, it worked okay. Friends were saying, oh, splits, gotta get splits. And so we thought, how many years is Charlie going to be interested in carrying up the air conditioner? Talking about resale value, all the practical things, because it was an investment. I'm newly retired, it was, a big decision to make. And so we thought, well, for resale for our house, people are expecting central air or splits. So yeah, let's just do it. Let's do it. So we did it. It is so great. I mean, it's hard to think about the 90-degree weeks that we have in the summer. Oh, as the summers are getting hotter, that was another practical reason for doing this. Well, what we found though, is that having that physical change in our space changed so many things. First, at the relationship, it wasn't like, gee, it's such a nice morning. We've got to close the house because I can feel it's getting warmer. Hurry up, close the house. And then also, we can't entertain. We had to cancel some parties that we had planned because all our parties had to be outdoors. Well, it's smoky today, the fires, let's cancel. Or, so now we can have people in our dining room in the summertime. And I made a birthday cake in August.
Praise God.
And it turned out. I remembered to not only set the oven, but start the timer. But yeah, anyway, I digress. But so when I think about the why for this campaign, that little appliance changed how Charlie and I relate to each other and how we serve our friends and we see our house. And so when I think about all the practical reasons we're doing this campaign, but there's these intangibles. Well, it's tangible community, I can feel it. But we don't know how these physical changes are going to change how we see ourselves in our community and our ability to serve and engage and be relevant. So that's my.
Thank you, Sally. Well said. I wanted to make sure we got that story in one of these Sundays. I'm so glad you brought everything, Sally. So let's look back at the last couple of weeks and just do a quick dive through what we already have addressed and talked about. The idea for the capital campaign originated, as you probably have heard already, in two different forms. There were a large number of capital improvement projects regularly occurring every year for over the last 15 years that I've been here and preceding even that. We'll talk about the reserve fund, or we talked about the reserve fund as one of those things, but funding was needed to improve those items that were going out of date or needed repair, and to fix things that were getting broken, oftentimes to the tune of 6 figures. Then, of course, we had another impetus for this project. Use of our space continues to grow each year, particularly in programs and outside community groups. While we don't generate a ton of revenue each year off of these uses from outside groups particularly, we do continue to encounter ways that our building limits our ability to serve our partner organizations like Big Wonder, Artaria, and the House of Prayer, as well as other community groups that use our space, theater groups, music groups, 12-step groups, neighborhood associations, and many, many more. In the listening phase, we were able to listen carefully both to our money narratives and our history with fundraising. We were able to gather feedback from our partners, and we were able to listen closely to each individual's hopes and dreams for this building and how we use it into the future. During the feasibility study that followed the listening phase, we were able to understand and test out the possibility of raising funds for over $6.7 million worth of projects that were articulated and named in that very inclusive and democratic process of gathering feedback. That meant that we conducted 19 household interviews and 105 households took our online survey. That's over 54% of our faith community, a really remarkable response rate. It was a huge success and we learned a lot. And most importantly, we found that roughly 3 million of the projects that we were testing for were achievable and desired with buy-in and support from our members. 2.7 million was deemed our realistic goal, and another 200,000 plus could be possible if those who are able stretched a little in this season, and we'll talk about that goal in a moment. Throughout the process, we've paid close attention to the why, as I've already said today, and as such, we've been very intentional about being inclusive of all voices and a diversity of leadership at each turn. In the first two phases of our campaign, the listening phase and the feasibility phase, we were led by a group of faithful leaders, many of whom are known to you and are even in the room today. Rick Rinkoff, Betty Ashcroft, Holly Weinkoff, Sally Sand, and Sarah Dull as a representative of our staff, as well as our consultants, Mika Vandersal and Tim Anderson, who have been with us at every step of the way. Then our current leadership team took over as we began a capital campaign, many of whom are also in the room today, and that includes our Fearless co-chairs, Carrie Keeler and Don Weinkoff in the back, our Advanced Gifts co-chairs, Holly Weinkoff and Alice Leitner, Congregational Gifts co-chair Sally Sand and Lynn Hertz, and Events co-chairs Bob Bauman and Susan Creel, Spiritual Emphasis leaders, co-chairs Dan Vogel and Jax Collins, and our communications chair, Allison Brown. Probably you've received some emails from Allison. She's reflective of that desire to have a diversity of representation. She's one of our newest members, and now she's, at least by writing, one of the most well-known because you receive regular communication from her. And still more have agreed to help out with this work as prayer partners through our Community of Hope International Circle of Care Ministry. We've got dozens of people involved in both congregational gifts as inviters and as advanced gift inviters. And it really is dramatic to see the number of people who are contributing. As one recent visitor said on a given Sunday when they visited and were introduced to 4 or 5 other people, each person would kind of, as we do as Episcopalians, list off their resume of things that they do in the church. And every person that came up was also involved in the capital campaign, leading the visitor to say, is everybody here working on the capital campaign? As you may have read in the feasibility study report, great care must be taken in inviting all gifts of all sizes. And this is a shift in our culture of fundraising and the money narratives of the congregation from previous generations. In addition, connecting the why of this campaign to the values of the congregation will be critical. The campaign cannot be done for the sole purpose of raising money, but must be done as a vehicle for change making to enable the congregation to help make the changes in both the lives of congregants, but also the wider community. Hopefully you're hearing that echoed in what we've talked about already. You can read the whole feasibility study, also archived on our website. There is large support for the category of love, which in the feasibility study was the title for the Capital Reserve Fund for future unfunded capital projects, which we talked about in our first Sunday forum. And just behind this priority was large support for 2 areas, both welcome and community, which included projects that we were able to flesh out with help from architects at OPN that included things like the ADA compliant bathrooms, new reception space, a refreshed fireside room, a modern and safe catering kitchen that does have some capacity for cooking, and the pre-function space in front of it, as well as a new reconfigured storage and a brand new gathering space to allow us to meet the needs of those ever increasing asks from groups. But so much of this campaign is focused on people. Yes, we've had pictures of rooms and lists of items that likely will physically change the building over the course of these projects. But so much of the emphasis of the work that we're doing is on things that we can't fully picture with renderings and blueprints. Like Sally's story of an almost invisible home improvement there is much in this campaign that is not easily to meet the eye. For instance, that capital reserve fund is hard to show in a picture. And even more so, the work it will support will be behind the scenes. The reserve fund will be there for boilers and HVAC and repairs for and replacement of the natural use in the course of a building. It's there for windows and for carpets, the sorts of things that we rarely notice or even see until they're broken or dysfunctional. Likewise, many of the renovations will touch spaces we rarely inhabit, so they're unfamiliar to us because of use and our eyesight, where we go, where we look. We're opening up a whole storage space and turning it into a new room. I'll bet the majority of the members have never been to the space directly below our feet, unless you years ago were involved in the huge sale or maybe occasionally helped put away tables and chairs after a fellowship event. That is largely unseen space. And perhaps most importantly, the focus of our work will be on people, as I said at the outset, how we serve each other in community and our neighbors. We have a unique and a very good problem to have. Most churches sit empty or relatively unused or underutilized during the week between Sunday services. We, on the other hand, find that the desire for our space both by St. John's ministries and members, as well as dozens of other outside groups, is incredibly high. To visit the building any evening during the week is to find a myriad of activities, often competing for and overlapping in this space. This isn't always a visible reality for those and for the majority of our members who are here on Sundays and maybe not during the rest of the week. These projects that we've been talking about take a huge step forward in helping us better serve the people who not only want to be here and to use our space, but often need to be here. The events and ministries that need our space are changing lives. I don't say that lightly. Today, I want to talk about the two final pieces of this year's fundraising. Both are hard to depict projects, but incredibly important pieces of this capital campaign and the ministry of this church. They are the annual budget and the capital campaign stretch goal. As I mentioned at the beginning, with a realistic and feasible goal of $2.7 million, we would be able to achieve all of the renovations of the new spaces, as well as increasing, as described on our preceding two Sundays, as well as that capital reserve fund of $1 million to help us with capital repairs and projects on an as-needed basis into the future. Through survey and interview responses, our consultants were also able to calculate that an additional roughly $200,000 would be feasible as our stretch goal. So let's talk about these projects. Can you see all the people? Over the past 5 years, St. John's has been growing. I want to say that very clearly. Dozens of folks have been formally joining our faith community each year through our twice annual new member Sunday. Some of you who joined in that time frame are sitting in this room today. And as we will see today in our new member welcome at the 10 o'clock service. And even more, many more have been unofficially joining us through acts of participation, giving, and attendance, which is to say we have some new members we can track and some that we just see and we're pretty sure, yeah, they're a member now. They've been here a long time and they're giving and participating. As we emerge from the pandemic, like many churches, we began to see a slow but steady return of in-person worship and ministry participation to pre-pandemic levels. It hasn't fully returned, but it has been an uptick each year. Then this summer, attendance spiked. Month by month comparison from this year to last, starting in July and continuing to now, has shown that there's an increase in attendance by as much as 10 to 15, even up to almost 20 on an average Sunday over the previous year's month in comparison. That is a significant increase for us and for any parish in our attendance. An uptick in visitors, in addition to this, has been, let me start over. This has been driven by two factors: an uptick in visitors who are eager to find community, make meaning in a time of great upheaval and uncertainty, as well as a desire to remain centered in practices of faith with deep historic roots, as well as a continued return of long time members who are re-engaging in the ministry of the church after a long season away. We are seeing both. When we began our capital campaign, one of the priorities, one of our why factors that I named at the outset was to sustain support for our existing ministries through our annual budget, to make sure we don't lose momentum and to keep growing. At the same time, guided by our consultants, we understand that achieving growth in our budget, at least, would be not totally likely in the midst of a capital campaign, since we're asking for extraordinary special extra funds in this time. As such, we've asked each donor to St. John's to prioritize their annual contribution, at least at the level it was in 2025, before considering a gift to the capital campaign. Unlike in previous years, when we've identified a stewardship goal for our annual campaign that reflected the known and anticipated increases in our ministry and growing costs each year, this year we're projecting no increases to our annual campaign. This is both realistic and predictable in a year of other asks. As such, we've asked ministry to a budget that looks a lot like this year's budget and this year's spending. At the same time, costs for everything, and you know this, you have your own home budgets, costs are going to go up regardless of whether we keep our budget flat or not. And this has our vestry and our finance committee facing the challenge of passing a balanced budget for fiscal year 2026 that reflects flat income from pledges and increasing costs for things like insurance, energy, cost of living, and more. And on the point of energy, I'm pleased to say we'll be putting in solar panels on the roof of the gym, not connected with the capital campaign. And that will, over time, bring our costs at least down. And that's a good thing. And I'm proud of our Creation Care team for proposing that in our vestry, for courageously funding it. And it will pay itself back in time. But, where did I lose my spot? Geez, don't freelance, Jared. Our vestry voted to, in light of all of this, the growing costs and the flat income, and the desire to keep our momentum going for a growing congregation, our vestry voted to set the stretch goal, that thing that we knew was feasible but did not have a priority set for it, that stretch goal would be a bridge fund for the operations of the church to serve as a way to cover any gaps between pledging and this year's and next year's budgets as needed. Of course, we hope and pray that our annual pledges will rise to meet increasing costs. St. John's has never failed to meet a challenge and has always been abundant in its giving. We have never wanted for financial resources, even when we've had to be creative to fund what we wanted to do for ministry. But if, as we've anticipated, it isn't realistic to think that we will raise new funds, the stretch goal will go a long way towards stabilizing our budget process and preserving our important staff and our ministries. So as Kai Risdall says, let's take a look at the numbers. To cover our annual operating costs as last year, at the moment, our naive budget says that we anticipate about $716,000 in pledges. It's important to note that over the last 15 years, this represents a dramatic increase in giving from the congregation from when I arrived, and the giving budget was about just under $500,000 to now. We have grown our annual pledging almost every year to meet the rising needs of the congregation and the increases in costs to run a church of this caliber. We will also anticipate about $84,000 in other revenue. This includes non-pledged income, special offerings, and the category known as use of facilities, which we're delighted that our partnership with Big Wonder in particular is a benefit to them, but also that it has a small revenue stream for our operating expenses, most likely to cover things like deferred maintenance, cleaning, and the care of that facility, so that they have a good resource to use. And then on top of all this, we anticipate about another $361,600 in distributions from endowments and other investments, which reflects at present a cumulative 4.25% draw rate as set by the trustees of the trust. which is a separate entity from St. John's and is a great benefit to our operating budget each year and gives a sizable, as you can see, boost to our ability to do ministry, which provides us with an anticipated $1,161,600 as estimated income. At the same time, in 2026, for our more than 60 ministries, we project that the cost will be approximately $1.26 million to pay the same ministry that we achieved in 2025. This amounts to an anticipated, if you're quickly doing math in your head, about $100,000 gap between budget and income, between income and expense. This is not the first time that our budget process has faced a similar challenge. I don't want to pretend like these numbers are not large figures. They are, they're very large figures. And an institution of our size has dealt with this and larger gaps in the past. And it is not unusual for us to face at every budget cycle something like this. Almost every year I've been here in the fall, we've anticipated the cost for ministry to exceed the anticipated income in all its streams. That's because we have big eyes when it comes to ministry. We really do act boldly here at St. John's. And as such, I'm not anxious about this year's challenge. And I hope you're not hearing that in these clear numbers. Again, we talk about money narrative. Sometimes when we name big numbers, it immediately brings up our own experiences with lack of resources. Sometimes it brings up the fears we've had to live through in our own lives. I don't want you to hear this as fearful leadership. Our church is up to the task. And our treasurer, Rick Rinkoff, would like to have some levers at his disposal when it comes to doing what he lovingly calls treasurer magic at the end of every budget cycle, just before we go to the annual meeting. Don't worry, treasurer magic follows all the acceptable accounting practices for nonprofits. It is, in fact, not a course taught at Hogwarts, and Rick is good at it. He has achieved all of his owls. But we do believe that with the lever of the stretch goal, the bridge fund, and some other levers that we have at our disposal, that we'll pass that balanced budget. We know we'll pass that balanced budget. We'd like to do that with as minimal impact to what is a growing congregation and a thriving ministry and a bold take on seeking the repair of the streets that we live in and the foundations of all the world around us. Doing that outreach we know and love. So that is the rock skipping across the top of the water of all the things in operating and in stretch goals. And so we've come to that part. Also, I hope you appreciate that on the numbers page, I put a rector and an Easter bunny outfit just to make sure it was very serious. We've arrived at that time that is questions and conversation, and keeping in mind, again, that there will be a lot more information provided at our kickoff event as we celebrate what we've already raised, which is quite considerable, and that news will be coming in 2 weeks. And keeping in mind there will be small meetings where you'll have a lot of opportunity deep into the weeds on asking questions. And just so that everyone in the room can see, I rattled off names. Anyone who's working on the capital campaign, raise your hand in the room. So these are not only volunteers, these are also donors to the projects as well. So they're both in the seats as listeners and learners today, and also as resources to the rest of you who might have questions. That being said, I want to make sure we leave time for everyone to ask a question. So if we don't get to your second or third question, we'll make sure that there's time afterwards where you can meet with me or one of the folks that raised their hand. Questions, comments, thoughts? Jan?
You talked about attendance, and I'm wondering, are you including those who tune in on Zoom?
We do include them. Those are not included in my numbers that I just listed. They would increase it even more so. But that we do include them, and there is a way that the national church is accommodated for this post-pandemic shift. That if we're going to keep track of our numbers year by year and make it useful information, we kind of now need to include in some category, form, or shape, online participation, because almost every church, even the smallest rural churches, now have some means of doing digital ministry. And so we do count it. It is counted.
Could I just ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
Is it a reasonable expectation or understanding or consideration that those who are zooming in are not all known members,
Uh,
but could be.
That's a great question, Jan. For those listening online, the question was, with our online worship, is it an assumption that many of those folks who join us virtually are not members and could be? We do account for the possibility of that. The good news is that the majority of people who worship online are visible to us, so we can see who is there and who isn't there most of the time. But we also have, just as we have ushers at church, we have a digital usher who asks people, you'll hear Judy say, if you'd like to fill out the online visitor form, it's in the chat. That is keeping track of, so that when people want to identify themselves as a visitor, we actually do follow up with them. So we capture that information the same way we would on a Sunday morning physically. So good question. Other questions about this presentation, things I said in there, or just about the campaign itself? Yeah, Betty.
It's not a question, I just wanted to throw in a comment that right now I'm kind of wearing my vestry hat. Because we are at the point of looking at the budget for 2026. And as always, you know, there's this element of stress because such a large portion of our budget is goes to staff compensation. We have such an amazing, talented, dedicated staff. We've got this beautiful building and we've got an amazing staff. And just the thought of trying to balance the budget by reducing staff is something that I don't want. It's not a place I want to go, and I know the vestry doesn't either. So this bridge fund is gonna address some of those concerns, at least for the next couple of years, and I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to consider the value of, you know, supporting our wonderful staff. And some of the staff are doing work that we never see. I mean, Kathy, you could probably speak to this because a lot of it is with youth ministry. And your grandson, it's been a huge thing for him and so many young people that we don't see on Sunday mornings.
Thank you for that, Betty.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Sally.
I'm not sure those listening online were able to capture Betty's wonderful comments, so maybe you could summarize or say,
Yeah,
talk
absolutely.
to Betty.
Yeah, anyone listening online, Betty wanted to make sure that we heard and understood the complexity of balancing the budget includes not just a building and the operating expenses, but a really robust and beloved staff. And a lot of their work is invisible, and also a lot of the needs of the church, because what was historically done by a group of volunteers is supported and oftentimes even done by our staff is just not seen. And so Betty used the reference to youth ministry, but of course there's office, there's sexton, there's all the things that happen behind the scenes. You could just go on and on. It isn't just clergy and music. Holly.
Yeah, my question is kind of related to this. If I understand it correctly, what you've labeled as a bridge fund, or, it will come from the capital campaign if we get. So my question then becomes, if I contribute to the capital campaign, I am assuming I am contributing to whatever is described as the needs of this building and the imagination we're going to apply to making it better.
Right.
So how do you respond to me then when the capital campaign exceeds its goal, and so some of that money goes into the operating budget, and I'm going, I thought I contributed to this lovely building. Not that I don't love the staff, not that I don't want the operating budget to succeed.
Right.
But how do you respond to the donor who thinks that they gave to a traditional capital campaign building?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Holly. Everything is interrelated. And so I think one of the things that we really tried to do, and in this campaign, we were really clear we didn't want to do, is take designated gifts for this project or that project, which means, understandably, some of our donors don't want to give because they value X project, but maybe not Y project, and they prefer not to. And I think in our operating budget, we've been really good over the last 15 years of emphasizing it's all connected. Everything we do, every dollar given is a part of the whole. And some parishioners value X and some parishioners value Y, but we want to emphasize that each dollar given offsets a cost here or complements a cost there. And so there is a connection to them. So that's the first thing I would say to any donor is that it's all related. And then the second thing I would say is that a large portion of that gap fund is going to end up in operations of the building. So it's going to end up covering building needs for this year, which include unanticipated, but we budget for, but unanticipated repairs that come up. So this year, for instance, we had a multiple, 5-figure project on the elevator. I didn't even know it happened because the property committee and the building manager had addressed it, but it was huge. It was a big cost. And I found out about it a couple weeks after we had done it, and it was just one of those things. So I would say that the 100,000 is going to go to that. And third, stretch goals are to be that. They're to be goals for things that you deem worthy to use those funds for. And this felt like the thing in this moment that we really need to keep our eye on, that we hit that stretch. Of course, there are other things in the $6.7 million that we tested for that would be lovely to do, including a full operational kitchen. I know is a desire for many of our parishioners. And so the question would be, if we, when we looked at these, was do we value a cooking kitchen over keeping our staff fully where it is, or should we cut our staff so that we can have stoves and HVAC? And that was a real conversation that we had. And this is just the reality of where we are budgetarily right now. And it felt like something the congregation would want to support and want to cover. We could easily turn it into an operating budget annual ask and say, can we raise 100,000 more out of operating? It was the advice of our consultants that it's never good in a capital campaign year to ask for increases on your operations side. It's okay to expect that it'll be flush and you're not going to go down, but to not try to grow it. So, yeah. Other questions? We'll come back to you, Jen, in a moment if there aren't other questions. I do want to get to yours though. And online, you're welcome as well. Well then, Jen.
That's sort of. I have a comment and a question. The comment is, the increase in attendance, is probably multifaceted as far as I'm concerned, but one thing that I think is important to observe and to remember is the, changes in liturgy and how that draws folks that have not been with us before.
Thank you.
And Reconciliation Sunday, I said a long time ago to Craig, I'll never let him change it. It means a great deal to me, and you don't see that. I don't think you see that. But it's true, and I know it's true about this thing.
Thank you, Jen.
And it's very relevant today, always, for some of us. But that's something. So to invite us to participate in the planning of liturgy is, I think, important, and also to recognize that our ethic and beliefs and faith are represented in what's done here.
Yeah.
And not necessarily spoken as it might be.
Thank you. I'll just summarize that as briefly as possible, but correct me if I missed it. For those listening online, Jen wanted to point out that one of the factors that she believes is helping us grow at this time in attendance is definitely the liturgies that we've been bringing in, especially the racial reconciliation Holy Eucharist, which we'll observe today. And certainly that was implied by me, at least in my comment, that folks are coming to make sense in this kind of age of extremity, that the way we do liturgy and the way we've been shifting our ministries has been to honor those things that seem most relevant to folks seeking out church right now, and addressing the not speaking as the world, but speaking to a world that is in turmoil right now, with relevance. And that means music and liturgy and faith formation and all those things. I'm conscious we have just a minute or two left, and one additional thought occurred to me related to Holly's good question, and that is, it isn't uncommon in a capital campaign to hear a church want to do something extra that isn't building related. That's the other thing I should have said, is that this isn't an uncommon thing. As a small portion, sometimes people want to pledge it to social justice, or they might want to make a contribution to a project outside of their building because, and this connects to our money narratives, is often the case in progressive communities that we believe when we're raising money, that the only way to make it good money is to do something that isn't for us with it, so to turn it into something else. And you might say that the stretch fund kind of follows somewhat in that lineage, because there is a level of, at least for me, of justice and of parity, or whatever the word you want to use, of how we treat our staff in this time of uncertainty. We've certainly seen that's true in the wider employment field, that when bottom lines and people are held together, people almost always lose to bottom lines. And we want to be different here at St. John's and try to do that as not just fairly, but generously and hopefully.
Target?
With that,
You don't
No.
want to be targeted?
I don't want to be the federal government, I know that.
Please don't misinterpret my question. I am a big supporter of staff hearing.
Yeah.
And all of that. I was just wondering how.
How to speak to that
How
disconnect.
you, to speak to that disconnect
Yeah,
and the expectation people may have. And it's a strategic fundraising decision,
Yeah.
right? Not
Yeah.
to say, okay, make your decision about what you're gonna give to the operating
Right.
budget, but we're not gonna increase it this year. And then have a separate capital campaign, a part of which may go to an increase in the operating budget. It's just
it's.
yeah,
it
I know
didn't-
you
it
guys
didn't-
thought about it all.
No, it was a good question, and I know you well enough to know where the question came from, but thank you for saying that for everyone else who may not know you're calling me. That was really well said, and yeah, it did take some wrestling in it, and it does take kind of hearing the logic, if you could call it that, of what we were thinking and why. Well, thank you, friends. If you haven't already, the events people would very much like to know if you're going to surprise us by showing up as an unsubscribed attendee at November 9th. Doesn't mean you can't attend, but we're very close to our kind of all butts in all seats might make it very tight. So let us know if you're gonna haven't signed up but wanted to. Susan Creel will be happy to receive that number addition so she can plan for it along with Bob Bauman.
Also, I'm going to mention that there will be some traffic directions.
Yeah.
On that day.
Yeah.
There will be announcements, you will get something in the email, just pay attention because we want to get everybody in and eating and celebrating together as efficiently as possible. So just listen, and as we told Mika, our consultant on Friday, this parish takes direction well.
They do. Yeah, and which is to say, a reminder, this event on the 9th is not a forum. It's not like we've had here where we'll have lots of time for Q&A. It's 150 plus people. That would be impossible to do. So it's not that we don't want to hear your questions or have lots of conversation, but that is to say, most people will be looking at their packet for the first time that day. And there will be lots of events after that event for Q&A. So if you're coming to celebrate and eat a good meal and hear some information, awesome. That it'll be a fun time. I know it will be. And then also, if you have a lot of burning questions, sign up for one of those events, or just pull aside one of us capital campaign workers and we'll talk to you. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah.
Jared, thank you very much.
Yeah, great to have this meeting with all of you. Come back next Sunday when we do something entirely different as we pivot to food and faith. And come on Wednesday evenings to join us for a meal as we talk about it with some cool cooks who are doing some cool things. So